We are live on Facebook, President.
Yeah. Friends, a very good morning to all. Myself, Jitendra Lohia, President ACAE, welcome you all to this session of ACAE at 11. As you all be knowing, and just I welcome the new guest over here, our panelist. We have been doing this session for last 35 days, and till today we have done approximately 50 sessions live on varied topics, starting from economy to wellness to health, and everything we have tried to cover. So I think the participant and the attendees have benefited from the different discussions which we have done during the past. And yes, we will plan for the future session on the same line. All the sessions are available on our YouTube channel and Facebook videos. So you can even go and access this. Friends, we have also, during this lockdown, we have also come up with a publication of e-bulletin where we have tried, our team has tried to put in all the circular and notification at one place at just click of your button. So you'll get over there all the notification which has been issued during COVID period and under any law. So please do go and visit the site, and if you can also share it to your contact for wider usage. And just before we start this session, we have tomorrow one session at 5 p.m. It's about emotional wellness 360 degree, mental health, the lockdown and beyond. And this session would be taken by Ms. Meenu Bodhia. She is founder director of Caring Mind, and Ms. Priyam Bodhia, head initiative Caring Mind. So this is the session which we have planned for tomorrow. And yes, on the coming days also, we'll be having a regular session as we are having it on last 35 days. So friends, now the session which we are eagerly waiting for, we have today with us three panelists, the renowned industrialists of this part of India. And our today's discussion topic would be a panel discussion on the topic, Young Entrepreneurs' Perspective on Evolvement of Business Post-COVID. Yes, we all know that this COVID has taken and would be taking a toll on maximum of the business all over the world or entire globe. So yes, no one would be spared, but yes, we can discuss and see what ways we can overcome it. And for this, we have with us Mr. Mayank Jalan of Caventer Agro, and then we have Mehul Mohanka, Acae Industries, and Kesav Bhajanka, Century Plywood. These are the conglomerate business house in eastern part of India. We welcome you all to this session. And yes, our session would be moderated by our past president, Dinesh Banjaraji. So let us start this session, and I will not take much further of your time. So over to you, Dinesh.
Thank you, dear Jitendra Lohia, our president. Welcome all my colleagues. Modi ji ne kaha ki let the younger generation in the country come forward, do some invention. So we invented the three budding industrial houses ke next gen, and we invited Mayank Jalan, Keshav Bhajanka, and Mehul Mohanka, who readily agreed. So I welcome all three of you. We'll have a panel. Before that, let me just give a brief introduction of the three speakers, three panelists today. Mr. Mayank Jalan, who we all know, is a CMD of Caventer Agro Limited at present. He joined the company in 2004. He is a first-class degree holder, mechanical engineering from University College of London. He also has a degree in business finance from prestigious London School of Economics. Under his stewardship, Caventers has diversified into multiple sectors like hospitality, exports, realty, while consolidating its position in its core food business. He is president of Indian Chamber of Commerce, Kolkata, and he was a chairman of FICCI West Bengal Council till July 2019. He was introduced into the special think tank force for agriculture activities in September 2017 by Niti Aayog. He has been conferred a number of awards by various forums, and presently he is also Honorary Council of Ireland in Kolkata. So welcome, Mayank bhai. Next panelist, we have Mr. Keshav Bhajanka. He is an executive director of Century Plywood Limited. After completing his graduation from Warwick University in UK, he joined Century Ply as a director and took charge of decorative business of Century Ply in 2010. In last 3 years, the profits of this vertical in his company has tripled, and he has been instrumental in developing various more products, various new products. He is presently chairman of Young Leaders Forum of Chamber of Commerce. He is one of the youngest members of YPO. He's a member of Roundtable India, member of Friends Tribal Society, to name a few. So welcome, Keshavji. The third panelist we have for the day is Mr. Mehul Mohanka. He is MD and Group CEO of parent company Tega Industries Limited, and is an executive director of Tega Industries Limited, India. After completing his graduation, he did his master's in business administration from University of Pittsburgh and advanced management program from Harvard University, USA. Tega Industries Limited has presence in a number of countries in the world, and Mr. Mehul Mohanka is a director in various global companies of the group. He has received various awards from various forums, and very proudly I can say Tega Industries was one of the recipients at an ETBCA Bengal Corporate Award, which has been presented by our association for a number of years. Presently, he is Vice President of WB Council and National Chairman of Mining and Construction Equipment Division of CII. So, welcome, Mr. Mehul Mohanka ji.
Thank you.
So the panel, we will keep it this way. I will request the three panelists one by one to share their views on their perspective on the evolvement of business post COVID-19. Say maybe 8-10 minutes as you may take, and then after a 1-2 minute interruption by or additions by me on your thoughts, we'll have another 5-minute round by each one of you. And then we'll have it an open question answer session, which should be over by 12:20 or 12:30. So that's fine with the panelists. I have already discussed. Yeah. So first of all, I'll invite Mr. Mayank Jalan. We want to know all your views, because we read in press for last a month and a half, all three panelists. So optimist, pessimist, सब खबर आते ही रहते हैं. तो हम लोग तो profession में हैं, वही profession run after you make money, and then we come. So we want you all to make money, to be honest. हाँ, तभी तो हमारा तो 2 नंबर में है ना भाई, आपके पीछे है लाइन. So
thank you, Jinesh bhai. I think it's a big honor to be invited on this platform. It's a little intimidating because usually all of you are the people that we look up to and we look for advice. So when you first asked me, I thought it should be reverse, where I should be in the audience asking you questions on what we should be doing.
No, it's a two-way thing, man.
So first of all, I want to welcome all of you. A lot of you I know personally. I'm seeing all the names. A lot of you have been mentoring and advising me over the last decade or so that I've been working here. Thank you for joining in today. So I want to just share a few of my thinking and the way that I look at things is whenever over the last 15 years in business, I've come across a situation which we term as crisis. We also look at that moment or that crisis as a turning point, as a situation, as an inflection point where things are going to change forever. Now, whether that change is for good or for bad, for better or for worse, it is a turning point, and we need to actually be aware that during a crisis, all the actions and decisions that we take, and that is going to shape our future as leaders, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as professionals. And I think today the globe is seeing two major crises, not one. I think one that every media house is actually focusing on is the coronavirus, or the COVID-19 epidemic, which is ongoing. But in my opinion, the larger issue that we have to deal with is the subsequent economic impact that we have to deal with in the coming 6 months, 9 months, and 1.5 years, in my opinion. Let's also understand that the backdrop of this coronavirus shock in our economy, the backdrop has been where India's growth had seen a downward trajectory already. There was a liquidity issue emanating in the markets. There was an issue of confidence. So it wasn't like we were growing very rapidly and things were very good, and then we had the shock. So we already had a lot of issues that the Indian economy was dealing with. And middle of all of those issues, we had this breakout of this pandemic, which has put us in an unprecedented lockdown globally. um, this lockdown has disrupted a lot of things. It has disrupted supply chains locally, globally. The markets have turned bearish. The investment sentiments have turned bearish. There's a lot of people who will be holding on to cash and not wanting to deploy. A lot of workforce has been displaced. Export businesses, manufacturing businesses across sectors are taking a brunt of it. There is absolutely not a single sector which has been spared. So if we feel that, oh, service sector will be fine, manufacturing will be fine, essentials will be fine, medical facilities will be fine. So I've had a few conversations with people who run hospitals, and let me tell you that they're not fine. So it's a shock that has actually happened across industry segments. It is an estimate that we have about 69 million MSMEs in India, contributing to a major amount of employment that India generates across various industries like auto, apparel, F&B, agriculture, and they are the hardest hit. So whenever I'm talking to MSMEs on the Indian Chamber platform, or my own vendors and my own suppliers, the way that they are suffering from cash flow is something which is unimaginable. But I always go back to something which Albert Camus, the Nobel Prize winning philosopher, had said, that in the depth of winter, I finally learned that there was in me an invincible summer. We as humans are resilient species. We are adaptable by nature. We have a resourcefulness inside us that says no problem is permanent and nothing that happens is pervasive. Post coronavirus, I feel that India is going to have the opportunity to build an economy that is more resilient, more diversified, and attractive to the global manufacturers and service, as the majority of the business worldwide have faced disruption and economic fallout. We also have to start looking at what is going to happen post COVID-19. We can either go into a mental setup of a doom and gloom and that nothing is going to work, nothing is going to happen. But the way that I would actually look at it is, and the way that I've been looking at it internally, is that we haven't actually gone back. We haven't actually suffered. We haven't actually had a disaster where we'll not come out of. The way that I am looking at it is that we are accelerating ourselves to a new normal. The way the technology adoption is happening now, I look at yourselves. All of you have been in consulting or management and been advising people like us. Today, we have been brought together on this Zoom platform. I think 2 months back, if I was to actually say that, let's have a webinar, people would actually scoff at me. People would laugh at me. And I've been trying to do this on Indian Chamber where, for the last 1 year, I've been trying to push digital content. I've been trying to do a lot of online stuff. And people said, "Arey, usme maza nahi aata." And maza to wahi hai jab apne taj mein baith kar thoda bahut gapshap kare aur thoda chai coffee piye. But today, with technology adoption happening at all ages. So I have my father who's above 70, who's on Zoom call every day. And I could not have ever imagined him getting on a Zoom call with his people to conduct his business. Now, because he's locked down at home, he has to find a way of carrying on. So with the way the technology is actually getting ingrained in us, I think once we recover out of this, once we recover out of the short-term pain, and there will be short-term pain, there's no denying, we would have accelerated as a business community to maybe by 2 or 3 or 4 years, we will see efficiencies coming into our businesses. We will see, we'll suddenly figure out that, can I run my business a lot more efficiently? Can I run my business leaner? Can I be more adaptable? Can I adopt to situations like this? And the great part, what really, really is something which, gives me a lot of hope for the future, that India is home to the largest young population in the world. That is our biggest challenge. Today, with the youth of India, who's so innovative, who has a zeal, of never say die and, want to go and take the lead in every single thing, it is something which will drive India to its ultimate spot as the leader of the global economy. Now, that depends on how we handle ourselves, how the government handles itself, how we all work together to overcome these short-term challenges. the Honorable Prime Minister has mentioned in his post that India, a youthful nation, will be known for its innovative zeal and can take the lead in providing a new work culture. We as Indians, I think, have the ability to leapfrog past our competitors and take our economy to the next level. It does not rain forever. The sun will shine. And when the sun shines, are we going to be ready to take the opportunities which are going to be thrown at us? So with that, I'm going to end my small address. Thank you for this opportunity. I would welcome all questions and Q&A at the end of the other two panelists' address. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayank Bhai, for being so positive and optimistic. Of course, these days we need positive thoughts from young people. And as you correctly said, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel, howsoever long or dark it may be. You said we'll be more efficient, more adaptable. And as you correctly said, 2 months ago, even we never thought of such Zoom meetings or such webinars. So I think we are at our level also. We have all thought of converting ourselves into technology experts. Believe me, you know it. I am myself not a technology expert here. I have to call my son and daughter to start this. But now I have started this using. So it is a great opportunity ahead. So before we can have a second round or a question answer thereafter, let me invite Mr. Keshav Bhajanka to share his thoughts on the panel, please. Keshavji.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Jineshji, Jeetuji, for hosting me on this call. As Mayank said, that this is a very intimidating platform because you are the people that we look to for advice. You are the people that we look to for solutions. So, in order to share something here, it becomes all the more difficult. Especially when you're following Mayank, you get a little more intimidated with what you're going to say. But let me try to give it a shot. I am going to break this up from the point of view of our business, and I'm going to try and walk you through what we have been trying and what we feel is going to be the outcome on the home building sector and on the real estate sector, and how we are looking to cope with that. So Century is the largest manufacturer of plywood, MDF, laminates, and other allied panel products in the country. I'd like to break down the impact into 3 time frames: the short term, the medium term, and the long term. By short term, I mean the next 6 months. Now, I think this goes without saying, and we are all gearing up to it, that business is going to be hit. There is definitely going to be a negative sentiment. People are going to try to hold on to cash. All discretionary expenditure is going to be either reduced or it will be deferred. So that is what the mindset of people is likely to become. I think when you look at our sector, we need to clearly identify where exactly we want to hit. So the new projects that were supposed to come up, I think anybody here who was ready to build a house or who was ready to renovate a flat or who was ready to renovate the house will defer the decision by a few months because the sentiment is not right. More than liquidity, the sentiment right now is not very conducive to it. So I think new projects will be deferred. I think because of the labor shortage, because migrant labor have moved out of their particular geography, they have gone back to their villages, they have gone back to their towns, or even if they have not, if they are stuck in a particular location, once the lockdown opens, they will once go back to their villages. They will once go back to their origins so that they can take care of the family, so that they can take stock of the situation back home, so on and so forth. So I think the projects that are midway through are going to suffer a big hit. I think projects that are somewhere close to completion, because so much money has already been invested, because there is the interest meter, which the government has not helped us with, because there are a lot of other issues, people are going to try and expedite that. So that is going to be where a company like us is going to be competing. Now, when you look at these projects, the first demand is going to be the price ghataye, which is going to eat into an already hit top line and bottom line. So how are we looking to counter this? Okay, Century has one of the strongest balance sheets, I would say, of most of the companies in our space. Now, the chairman, my father, always has this statement. He says, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is reality. So this is something that we take to heart. And as such, we are very, very fiscally prudent. We are very, very financially sound. And we are going to use this to support the people who need it in our trade. That is our dealers and distributors. Those people don't have the funds. They don't have the money to get the ball rolling, even if they have the desire. So as a company, we are going to try and push them. We are going to try and facilitate extra credit so that we can get the ball rolling first. Now, if you look at retailers, and like Mayank said, you need to adapt. You need to think of a different business model. Till now, the basic interaction in our industry was we had sales executives. They would go and meet retailers. There would be pleasantries. There would be a discussion on work. And then the workflow would start. Now, because of social distancing, people are not going to want to meet. In the short term, at least, I think the new normal is going to be a sense of distancing. As such, we have invested very heavily in the past month and a half during the lockdown period, or during when the lockdown was supposed to begin, in a software which will help us connect with every single retailer in the country through a WhatsApp call or through a telecall. Now, for the next 3 months, I think this is going to be a big bonus to us because the executive sitting at his house will have the option to see exactly who he needs to connect with, to be able to connect with them, to first get a sense of whether that person has a requirement, wants a meeting or not, and then decide on when to go for the meeting or schedule it accordingly. So I think that is one change that we have tried to bring about in this interim period, anticipating the challenge that is likely to come in the future. Now, if you look at architects and our customers, these are people who are very well to do. These are people who want quality products. These are people who are literate. And as you all said right now, they are becoming more and more tech savvy. Earlier, we always had the need to digitize our products, but the relevance of that was far lesser. You see, when you have a situation where the customer wants to see a catalog physically, then putting that online is just a hygiene fact. It is just an additional benefit that you don't really know if it will help you or not. Now, what we have done is all our literature, all our collaterals, everything has been digitized, and we have created or we're in the process of creating an online platform that is so simple to use that any person who wants any information about any of our products, they are going to be able to click on a button on the website and get exactly what they want. So as the times have evolved, we have tried to adapt and we have tried to take an advantage out of this, because if somebody else has not been able to do it, we already have an edge over them. One thing that I would like to say, right now, the focus in the short term has to be on cash flow management. As such, we have employed a consultant called Renoir to look at our books, and we have been able to reduce our fixed expenses per month by 7 to 8 crores before we touch salary. So without cutting on wages, without cutting on salaries of employees, just by going through and removing unnecessary expenditure, we have been able to get to a saving of 7 to 8 crores per month. So I think if we all introspect and look at our books, fixed expenses can be managed better. So as Mayank was saying, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You will be able, or you should be able to come out of this stronger if you can do your homework well right now. We have also employed a video conferencing software called LifeSize. Now, every single person in the company is connected on this software. We opted for LifeSize over Zoom. But at the click of a button, I can video call or I can share files with any person in my company, and the entire data is stored there. So again, that is a move that helps us to connect and to continue work during the lockdown. During the medium term, so that was it for the short term. During the medium term, I believe that while the lockdown has been negative, there is no two ways to that. The economy would have been hurt badly. But one thing that the lockdown has done, it has made all of us spend a lot more time at home. So my mother is very happy that I'm eating at home. My wife is not so happy that I'm spending so much time with her at home. But regardless, you are spending more time at home. People have started to realize the importance of home. And even though in the medium term, they might not have the money to immediately go into a new house or to sort of get the will to take that decision, but that thought process has started. Whatever your house is, whatever your situation is, even if you lived in a palace, you will be thinking about improvements because you have spent more time at your respective houses. You have spent more time in a space and you have gotten more accustomed to its benefits and its shortcomings. So in the medium term, people are going to be thinking about this decision. And one thing that I do feel is going to happen, considering the state of the real estate market, which was already in the doldrums before, and considering the fact that a lot of completed inventory or semi-completed inventory is going to be in the market, the price of real estate should contract. I think it will contract by nothing less than 10-15%. So it will make it easier for consumers to start buying properties. So while I don't expect the benefit in the medium term, which is 7 to 24 months, I do believe that normalcy will start to creep back in, and we will be heading more towards a business as usual matrix. In the long term, I think there is a silver lining to this cloud. I think that for our industry or for any industry that is related to residential or to other real estate, the benefit will be that people will start moving into new accommodations. The government in the interim is going to be levying huge amount of taxes and duties on imports. There's already a petition going to levy a substantial duty on the import of ready-made furniture. All of these things are going to be playing into the hands of domestic industries. And I think that if we are able to manage all these points that I've mentioned well, we will be in a prime position to take advantage of the same. There is one more thought process that says there will be a lot of consolidation in the industry. All the small players will get into trouble and so on and so forth. But I have seen that there is no limit to the ingenuity of the Indian entrepreneur, regardless of the size. So I believe that that consolidation as of now is a theory. We don't know how it will pan out. So I think all that we can do is work on ourselves and try to make sure that we are able to improve ourselves, to take advantage of the benefit whenever it comes. One last point that I want to make is I think all of you who are based in Calcutta or any location in the country or any location in the world for that matter must have experienced the superior air quality that we have had in the past few days. Yesterday, I believe some report came out. We have had the best air quality in Calcutta over the course of the last 2 decades. Now, I don't know how correct the report is, but I can breathe better air. I can feel it. I can hear many more birds chirping outside. So the demand for environment-friendly products is going to be on the rise. People are going to become more aware. People are going to want better air quality. People are going to want a better environment. So this is one more area where once the lockdown opens, we are going to be directing a large part of our R&D expenditure. Because as per us, this is going to be the future. This is going to be the demand of the consumer who can afford it going forward. So you want to be in the correct place to sort of get that. So thank you all. I hope that I could give you some idea of my thought process, and I'll look forward to question and answers later. Thank you.
Thank you, Keshavji. You were also very positive in your thoughts, and of course, you talked of cash management, cash flow management, and people sitting on cash, sentiments not being right at the moment. But you correctly said we must be ready to take advantage of the situation and the benefits when it comes in the future. Very positive thoughts. One good thing I would like to say is, you said you would like to take care of your employee, your suppliers, your dealers, and not cutting through their pockets, rather going on a cash cutting drive on the other areas. Thoughtful things you have inherited from Jan Babu. We all have respected him, Sajanji, as a good philanthropic person, all of us. So thank you, Keshavbhai. So we have our next panelist, Mr. Mehul Mohanka, with a PAN World to presence throughout various countries. I'm sure Mehulji will have some more positive thoughts for us.
Thank you, Jinesh Bhai. In fact, one of the advantages or disadvantages of being last on the panel is that most of the other speakers before you have taken most of your points, so yours becomes the short one. So I'll try and keep it as precise as possible. Both Mayank and Keshav very rightly have spoken about macro issues and issues affecting businesses from cash flow perspective. So our business is no different. I think cash has always been something that's of critical importance. It's like, as my father would say, it's like the blood in the veins. So if cash flow chokes, no matter how good your business looks like on the balance sheet, there's nothing that you can do to survive. So we all come from the same lineage and pedigree as our prior generations, where cash has always been of utmost importance. And we has since always believed in proper cash flow management. So some of the things that we have done in the business, for example, is we've paid salaries to all our employees right through the lockdown phase, and will continue to do so. In fact, we went out and sent out a communication to our employees that that's what we plan to do. And more than as what our Prime Minister has been saying, that it's on moral grounds, we take it more as talent retention, because businesses which tend to let go of people or look at ways of cutting costs primarily through wages or salaries, I think have a short-term view, because it's people who drive businesses, and people need to be looked after once the business turns around. And if you don't have the right talent in place, no matter how good your expense item or your cost line looks like, you're not going to have good talented people to drive your business from there on. So I think talent retention in this period is absolutely crucial. There are people out there who are extremely nervous. There are employees who are nervous. And anyone who would get a good opportunity to jump ship would consider it. So, so businesses have to actively, HR departments, I think, find their role more important than ever to reach out to employees and ensure that people are taken care of, they are comfortable, they're aware of what's happening in the business, and those nervousness is taken care of. For our business, for example, it's more challenging because we're existing across the world. So we have about close to 1,600 employees across the world, with more than 900 residents outside of the country. And to reach out actively to each one of them is absolutely a critical challenge for us. And what we found, since the virus hit us is, certain things which we used to take for granted in terms of being able to just fly to any country, to be able to meet with whoever you want. Now, since that's been taken out of the system, as what was said earlier, virtual platforms like doing video conferences, virtual calls, meetings have become very, very critical at this stage. And that's one of the lifestyle changes I see at the corporate level, which is going to be there to stay. I think all of us as entrepreneurs have tasted it. We earlier didn't believe in it, but we've now tasted it. And I think even though post Covid-19, I think once things normalize, more and more organizations are going to continue to use these virtual platforms to reach out to employees or even customers. And in a very subtle and in a very precise fashion, we'll see a lot of our SG&A get adjusted to that. So that's an underline that a lot of travel costs, which are taken to visit customers or to travel to different subsidiaries across the world, I think that's going to get adjusted. So there's a direct saving right there in SG&A costs. I also truly believe that, in every crisis, there are opportunities. And as Keshav also mentioned, he's sitting on a good cash pile, so that's good. That will allow him to look at opportunities when they come up. And similarly for other businesses which have been prudent with cash, I think there will always be very, very good opportunities out there in the market to either invest or co-invest, partner, or acquire. And these are opportunities that one needs to be aware of, that this crisis is going to throw up. So even if, as Keshav mentioned, something as simple as acquiring real estate, so anyone who's sitting on some cash can get some great deals out there. And talking about opportunities, I also strongly believe that, in a down cycle, it's a great opportunity or a great time to get into capital expenditure. So contrary to what most people have been advocating, that conserve cash, delay, postpone CapEx, I truly believe that if your business merits CapEx, there can be no better time than to do CapEx today, because you're going to probably implement your CapEx at, maybe at 75% of the adjusted cost of what it was pre-COVID, 75 to 70%. You're going to get a 30% discount on your CapEx if you were to do it today. Now post-COVID, then pre-COVID. And that's, of course, the underlying is that your business should justify the CapEx and not just go out and do it at a whim. So we as a corporate have taken that view that, whatever CapEx plans we had, we're just going to reassess it. And if it still makes sense, we will go ahead and complete those CapEx and initiate them. I think from a professional perspective, a lot of us get into budgeting, and we finished our budgeting exercise in February. No one had anticipated what the virus will do to us. But what's going to stay, I think, with us for a very long time are, these management jargon such as risk assessment, sensitivity analysis. I think that's going to become more and more prudent with time to come, because not only at boardrooms, but even banks are going to look at, what's your COVID-19 adjustment on your budget. So I think that's something that we're going to live with for a few years to come. But on the positive side, the last crisis I think that we as an economy faced was probably 2008, when the financial crisis hit us. And it's been 12 years since, and I think not many of us would remember what 2008 looked like. So same, I think, with what COVID-19 is going to look like maybe 10 years, 15 years down the road. Very few of us are going to remember what COVID was all about, other than those who lose their loved ones to it. But I think we are going to be a world which will accept the virus as part of our daily lives. I think there's no other way to look at it other than that, because at some given point, there'll be many, many people who will be infected with it over time, with different variants of it or different degrees of impact on health. And it's just going to become way of life. So, there will be vaccines available in time. There will be Medicare, which will be more efficient to deal with it. And we just have to accept that it's something that's going to stay. We will just have to build our resistance in terms of our lifestyle around it. So I think it's going to be a while till people go back to stores, go back to malls, because that initial fear will be there. I think shops and establishments, small stores are going to take a hit because people are going to be more and more comfortable with e-commerce. But over time, I think some of that nervousness will go. I know everyone's waiting for this great vaccine to come out, and then life is going to be normal. But believe me, I don't think the vaccine is going to solve the issues, the scars and the mindset. So people will still be reluctant to travel, still be reluctant to step out. But in time, I think that will change. So life will come to normal, but it's not going to be in a hurry. I don't think it's going to happen even once that vaccine is out, because people are going to remember what the lockdown was all about. But yes, I mean, as everyone has said, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and things are going to change. One other issue, while most of the banks have been reluctant to lend, I think companies with good balance sheets will always have access to capital at a lower cost, because the downside of high liquidity in the market is that banks are willing to lend even at a lower cost to companies which are credit worthy. So for companies that can raise capital at lower cost, people who have balance sheets in India, outside of India, who can, I know there is capital available at sub-zero levels, even at 50 basis points today in different markets. It's a great time to raise some cash in this market and invest. So, like I said, I'm a strong believer of the fact that one should capitalize on opportunities. I think it's very easy to brood over the crisis and feel like everything is finished and it's going to be doomsday and it's going to take years before we recover. I think rather than spend time doing that, one should rather look at, what can I do with this opportunity that's presented itself? How can I be creative? How can I be innovative? What can I do with my business? What can I do with my department? If you're a professional, what can I do with, things at home? How can I reset what I've not been able to do and capitalize on this? Because like I said, if you accept the virus to be a part of your life, then you move on and you do other things with it. From a buying behavior also, I think spending on luxuries are going to cease for a while. I think people are going to be more realistic about what to do with their disposable cash. So, things which are deemed luxuries, maybe international holidays, vacations, maybe high purchases of consumer durables, I think is going to take a little bit of a backseat for some time till people figure out what they need to do with what they have. And for long, I think we as Indians have ignored health. And this is one impact that this virus is going to have on our mindset is I think we're going to invest more on health. So be it healthy food, maybe insurance cover, maybe going out for walks, just taking care of ourselves and not take certain things for granted. I think pre-COVID, we took a lot of things for granted. Health was one of them. And I think that's just a reality that's hit us that we need to do more to take care of ourselves, to take care of people around us and family. So I think that's going to be critical. Mayank did speak about MSME, and I think that's something that's of concern to all of us. I think MSMEs are the backbone of this country. I think contributes almost close to 50% of the GDP of the country. And I just think not enough is being done by the government to try and address that population. I don't know what the next package of stimulus is going to be from Delhi, but I believe that something seriously needs to be done to support the MSME community. And we as businesses can do what we can, but we are after all not, the sovereign state. There's as much as what we can do. And the government needs to step in different ways. I was one of the strong proponents of the fact that even during the IBC proceedings, there was nothing to protect the MSMEs when it was about, from the creditor protection plan. And MSMEs were just treated as one other, creditor, while large corporates can take a haircut when it comes to IBC settlements. MSMEs will be finished when it comes to IBC proceedings. So starting from there, I think MSMEs have often been ignored, and I think now's the time where it no longer can be ignored because we're staring at a real crisis when it comes to MSMEs. And as Mayank, we've been talking to a lot of our vendors. We've been supporting them through this crisis in whichever limited way we have been. We've been trying to support them with cash. We've been trying to support them, with business. Some of us have our factories which are functioning and running in a smaller capacity, but in whichever way we can, giving them preference to ensure that they stay sustainable, because supply chain is very critical for all our businesses, and MSMEs are the real backbone for our supply chain. So these were some of the quick thoughts I had. Globally, I think if I look at our overall market, like I said, more than 90% of our revenues comes from outside of the country, and we have manufacturing in multiple geographies, and we've seen what governments in other countries have done. In Australia, for example, there is support towards employee wages and salaries. Government is subsidizing wages and salaries, paying cash back to businesses to be able to support the wages and salaries of their employees. In Chile, for example, where we have a manufacturing unit, the government has given us, loans, extended loans, 5-year loans with 2-year moratoriums, and with no security or no collateral. So that's substantial. In South Africa, where we have a manufacturing unit, the government's again supporting us with wages and salaries. It's taking care of more than 70% of the wages and salaries of all employees in the business. So different countries are doing different things to stimulate the economy or support businesses. And it's just unfortunate that we still haven't come up with one. And I just sincerely hope that we come up with a plan for the country. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehul bhai. Again, a very positive thought of converting this COVID into an opportunity and capitalize. Again, coming that from a third speaker like that. You very correctly said, very rightly coined, blood in the veins. Cash flow is blood in the veins. Good coinage. You also said about nervousness in people and employees for the time being. It was very good to hear from you that rather than sitting on cash, industries should go for capex now and take this opportunity. And of course, this COVID-19 is going to help us increase in our efficiency. And in fact, some of my clients have already started saying that due to all this technological use and all, those who are working, they've reduced their cost by 10-15%. So they are thinking of continue with this pattern of working even post-COVID. So these are the ideas you have. And of course, you correctly talked about MSME support. So I would now, being the last speaker, I think you had an advantage over the others, what the others could not. I mean, you shared your thoughts. So we'll have a second round, starting with Mayank, then Keshav, and then yourself. And you can, crisscross each other's ideas. We being professionals, of course, we do give consulting on the professional and legal areas. You all know how to make money, and then we all can help you in compliance and how to preserve money, maybe. So good idea you all have, but
So, Jinesh bhai, if I can qualify, we have ridiculous ideas. You just make us sound local.
Well, that was in light.
Left us alone, there'll be mayhem in the corporate sector. I can speak for Mayank and myself. I don't know, Keshav seems to be much smarter than us. But reckless.
all of you are smarter, my dear. And it's a coexisting world, we walk hand in hand. You want to walk fast, you walk alone. You want to walk long, you walk together. That is what I've learned. So we all tend to work together, and we all as professionals also try to do our positive duties. Most of us, of course. But we also hear about countries migrating from multilateralism to bilateralism, unilateralism. At times we read these articles. This WhatsApp auntie keeps on sending articles. The new media these days. Maybe economy is turning from rightist to socialist patterns, and then again we talk of attracting industries from China to India and the thoughts. And of course, you have these MSME thoughts. It was good to hear from you. Countries like Chile, South Africa, Australia, some of them supporting on the wages and salary front, and some giving you loans on moratorium understood, but loans without security in a country like India, even when there is a security, we have seen the banking sector. We all know. So these are all good ideas. Let's have a second round of 5 minutes each. Mayank bhai, starting with you, please.
So I think most of the points are covered. I completely agree with Mehul that there needs to be a quick announcement from the government of India on the support measures. I think it's way overdue. On the darker side of things, there are people who are losing the nerve. There is an issue of confidence which is building up. I know of a few people in the MSME segment who from the 1st of May have decided to ask most of the people to go on leave without pay. I'm sure that the government of India is working towards confidence measures so that we can actually keep the payrolls and we can keep going on. Now, what also you mentioned, Jinesh bhai, is this event is also, I think, going to change the way that the world economy operates. There is going to be a shift. Now, let's look at it from a. So we were always taught about economies of scale. We were taught about having larger factories, a single unit, which is producing massive amounts of material on a daily basis. Let's say coronavirus is over, COVID goes away. But suddenly what we have realized is that some localized issue of some sort can actually derail your entire production. So today, if you have one factory in one location where there's a hotspot of a lot of coronavirus cases, the factory will be sealed. Your organization will come to a standstill. So I think as global organizations, and that's what I think the Japanese government has been talking about, and I think it's a big opportunity area for India, is they're going to be looking at multi-country operation. So you are going to have people who will want to hedge their risk and move the production out of just China. China has actually taken over the entire manufacturing boom, which happened during the 90s and early 2000s. But I think the second wave is going to come in where, large multinational corporates are going to look at hedging their risk and putting in the manufacturing in countries like India, which still gives you a huge young population, a relatively low cost of labor and manpower, and extremely highly skilled manpower, and a regime which is democratic and transparent, where the rule of law applies. So I think that's going to be a great opportunity for India, and it's up to us as individual businesses, corporates, as well as the government on how we take that on. I know that as a chamber president, I have been in regular conversations with Commerce and Industry and various other government officials, And I can tell you that government is working very seriously on this opportunity. So we are having like 2 calls every week. We have identified 12 sectors and then multiple subsectors where the targets that we're looking at is $100 billion export by 2025. So you're looking at $1.2 trillion of export by 2024 only in these 12 sectors, which we have identified that the sectors where India can play a key role in the coming times. It goes from air conditioning to electronics to some food processing. And when we're talking about food processing, because that's my area, we're not generalizing it. We have identified raw materials and sources and locations and, where India can really play a role. So the opportunity will be there. Now it's up to us together as a team on how we're going to take it. And but at the same time, what we have been emphasizing to the government of India is in the long term, we are all dead. Right. So right now we need some short-term measures. We need some confidence building measures. We need some announcements. And I think when the announcements are delayed and when it is not coming at the right time, it is doing a lot more damage. So we have been repeatedly requesting the government of India through various forums is, if not a complete announcement, at least just do a part announcement, or at least come on television and say that, okay, we are doing this and we will come with something within 3 or 4 or 5 days or 7 days. But then we also have to understand that India is an extremely complex country. Our economy is extremely complex and way beyond imaginations that we actually look at. There's a fiscal deficit issue, there's a GDP to debt issue, there's a ratings issue, and every little step that you take, there's a counter reaction happening somewhere else, which will damage us in the long term. So, but in my opinion, I'm very, very clear that government of India does need to step in, and it needs to step in right now. I think it's already late. It needs to boost the confidence of MSMEs. It needs to boost the confidence of large corporates. It needs to boost the confidence of service providers like yourselves. We will evolve, we will become stronger, but we can only do that if we survive and if we are going to live through this. There are people who will survive because they're strong inherently, but with a few people surviving and most not, it's not good news for the economy. It's a vicious cycle. So if only 10 companies are doing well and the rest of us are not, trust me, those 10 companies in the medium to long run will also not do well. So it's not something where you can say that, hey, I'm doing fine and it doesn't matter what happens to you, because all of us are interlinked. If I don't have the resources, I can't give consulting engagements to people like yourself. And if you don't get consulting engagements, you will not be able to employ people. And if you don't employ people, they will not be able to consume the products that Kevin sells. Hence, it's a vicious cycle. So we do need to step in. We do need to do things. I think it's already delayed, in my opinion. And I'm hoping that the announcements, or at least confidence building announcement, happens sooner than later. And I don't know the timeline, but I think everybody is just still trying to figure out when and what is going to happen. So over to Keshav. I don't know what his views are.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayank. It was, I think, the second note was more realistic, Keshav. Mayank was more realistic in saying that, yes, it's already late, and in the medium term or short term, we need more feel good to take us to the long term. We hear your ideas, Keshav.
No, I mean, it is fact. Today, when Mayank mentioned that people are growing irritated, I am one of those people. You see, I am not expecting a single benefit from the government for myself. For large scale industries, I think they made it very clear you are out on your own, which is fine. We will survive. But for the small and medium scale industry, for a dealer who today is struggling, who has taken a bank loan to extend his business, who was doing really well, but our business deals in credit. You need to give credit out to an architect or to a contractor to sell your material. So for those people, they have been badly hit. And I have no doubt that the government may be working extremely hard, but with every passing day, the pessimism keeps on growing. So I think it is high time, and being a part of ICC, I know how many representations Mayank and the rest of the ICC team has made. And it seems like right now, at least, it is falling on deaf ears. So I am hoping that they take an action sooner rather than later. Having said that, again, I think one thing that Mehul had mentioned, and I completely agree, is that in these times, doing capital expansion may actually prove to be cheaper. I was actually of a different mindset till about 2-3 weeks ago before I sat with my dad. And I think Mehul mentioned 2008. And my dad told me exactly this. Then 2007-8, everybody thought there was doom and gloom. Things are going to collapse. There's no point in expanding business. But at least for the plywood industry, the next 3 years were the best that we have seen in the last 2 decades. Demand increased on average by 20% per year, whatever the rationale was, whatever the reason was. And that was one of the strongest growth periods our company has had. So the largest capex project that we are undertaking or that we have ever undertaken, we will be undertaking in Uttar Pradesh, which I was of the opinion that should be held back. And Chairman, my dad completely bulldozed me saying that this is the right opportunity. We are going to do the project at a record cost and we should try completing it as soon as possible because nobody else is going to be thinking about expanding today. So I think that is very relevant. Mehul mentioned about health. And I think, well, looking at him, he doesn't need to pay that much attention to health. I think he already does. But for all of us, health is very important. And I think this has taught us, the lockdown without a doubt has taught us the importance of health. I am someone who is extremely lazy, but during the lockdown, I'm doing 10 to 12 kilometers a day of walking. I can't do much else, but I am doing 10 to 12 kilometers a day of walking. So we are all trying in our small ways to improve ourselves, to try and get back to being healthy. The air quality helps, like I mentioned earlier, it really helps. When I go for a walk downstairs, you can actually feel the difference in the air, so to speak. One more thing that I think Mehul had said, foreign vacations. Foreign vacations are now, unthinkable. But that helps, that makes me think that in India, going forward, the amount of potential, I know the hotel industry is going through a slump and, resorts in hotels and the doldrums, but going ahead, this could be a big opportunity. When you look at places like a Kerala, Kerala is God's own country. It is beautiful. If the right properties come up there, nobody is going to then go abroad and pay 50,000-60,000 rupees for a night per room in Thailand when you have something so good that will be available within your country. So there are opportunities with everything, and I think it is just about hitting or taking a calculated risk. Business is risk. You need to take a calculated risk, but I think that is of critical importance today. We cannot become completely risk averse, even though the current state is sort of forcing us. Like you said, no, a lot of right wing economists are now becoming leftist, but I'm not an economist. All I think is that for this economy to do well, for the economy to survive, there need to be economic measures that have to be put in place. And I am hoping and praying that the government does something soon. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Keshav bhai. You almost concurred with both the other panelists, Mayank bhai and Mehul ji. You said yes, government is getting a little late and we are all getting a little restless. So more realistic now that they should come out, not only feel good, but make good, make industry good. And of course, you concurred with what Mehul said. Capex, this is a good opportunity, but there's never a good perfect timing, as we say in stock market. So that's why we followed it SIP. So some risk always remain there. We have hit the low, or we are going to hit the low. We are not very sure. Anyway, let us now hear what Mehul has to sum up from the panelist side before we can really pose some questions to them. Mehul, please.
Yeah. So, just to sum up, I think, as I said earlier, with justice delayed is justice denied. So similarly, I think with every passing day, as more and more businesses go into the ICU, I think it's about time that the government comes up with a fiscal stimulus very, very quickly, because the longer it takes, I think there'll be nothing left to revive anymore. So I think it's long overdue, and I think all the panelists, and I'm sure everyone would agree with me on this. Coming back to thinking about what is it that we can do, and I often think about it, and I've been a very strong proponent of the fact that one of the best ways to pull a economy out of a crisis is to increase public expenditure. And successive governments, I think, have shied away from investing much into public expenditure. I know The Atal Bihari Vajpayee government started the quadrilateral project, and since then there has not been a very big public expenditure project which has been announced of that scale and magnitude. There have been incremental ones, but nothing of the time that Mr. Vajpayee had announced. And I think it's initiatives like that which are required: build bridges, build highways, build airports, do whatever is required to strengthen the infrastructure of the country. And that's what puts money back into the economy. Steel plants would revive, the commercial transport industry would revive, auto industry would revive. So something has to be done to increase public expenditure from my perspective. Second issue, I think, and if I look at multiple geographies across the world, people have been spending close to anywhere between 5 to 8% of GDP in terms of stimulus into the economy. So if you look at similar percentages for India, I mean, we're a $3 trillion economy. So even if we were to spend anywhere between 5 to 8%, that is ranging between 150 to 250 billion dollars that we can provide a stimulus in the economy if we were to follow guidelines of what other countries are doing. And we're not yet there, in terms of providing that level of stimulus for reasons best known to the government. And I think, for the government to take such bold measures, we've been shying away from printing money for some reason. We are very hung up with economic indicators such as, a budget deficit, inflation. But I think, these are all my views as a citizen, I think we need to borrow from the future to survive in the present. So when we look at inflationary indicators, we look at budget deficit, those are meaningless in today's time. These are things to worry about when the economy is going good and you have ways to control liquidity and put in fiscal measures. But today, I think, it's time to print money and not worry about budget deficit. So, and I don't know what the delay is all about, but I'm sure that the gurus and pundits sitting in RBI and in the finance ministry would have their own view on it. And I'm not anyone to second guess them. But to me as a layman, that seems to be an obvious choice. And from the MSME perspective, I think there's been a lot of debate about, who's going to provide loans, who's going to guarantee these loans. Banks are running up and down scared, NPAs, CBI, vigilance, all those come back to haunt each and every bank chairman or director. There's been talk about, I think the SBI chairman recently, about 2 weeks ago, I read in the papers, had raised issues around sovereign guarantees for MSME lending. I know many economies across the world have done that. I was just talking about Chile recently, and the Chilean government has provided sovereign guarantee against the loans that are being disbursed by the Federal Reserve Bank of Chile. And I think for this MSME sector in particular, there will be nervousness around banks to lend to a low credit class segment of the economy, and it justifies providing some kind of a sovereign guarantee to support the MSMEs. And that is something, again, I think the government needs to take a hard view on, because without guarantees, I think banks will be very reluctant to lend to the MSME sector. So these are just some.
If I was just to come into what Mehul is saying, and again, I can give you a little light on it. Let's understand what's happening with the banks right now. RBI reduces repo rate by 0.75%, 75 basis points. The banks have only passed on 5 to 25 at best. So 25 is PSU banks. Private banks is like 0.05%. So I was actually on a call with 12 bankers on a closed door meeting, again on the Indian Chamber platform. And I was asking them that, guys, why are you not passing it on? What's the issue? There was no answer, to be honest, no credible answer. But then something else came up, which is very interesting and which I think all of you guys will be able to relate to, is let's understand that every single business company will be making a loss in March, April, May, and probably June. So every single balance sheet will have losses. Now, we all know fundamentally there's only two ways of filling up that hole in the balance sheet, which is either debt or equity. We already know in the last 2 years, pretty much equity out of India or Indian promoters has been wiped out. There's not, no Indian promoter over the last 2-3 years has equity left. Then it's a question of debt. Now, even if your track record is good, even if the bank, whether private or PSU, likes your track record, I don't know if you're aware that they cannot actually give you a loan because there's an RBI circular which says that general purpose corporate loans cannot be given. So a simple measure where RBI actually allows a general purpose corporate loan to be given for 6 months for coronavirus affected companies will ease up a lot of liquidity issues. But if these simple steps are not taken timely manner, you're going to create a huge crisis or huge stress in the system. And the other most disappointing thing is that you have LTRO operations and TLTRO operations, which RBI has announced. But the fact of the matter is that all the money is flowing into a handful of corporates who are AA and AAA. 98% of the business houses do not have AA or AAA rating in the country. You know, if you are a B or double B, you're a pretty good company. But that's the median. So the other thing to worry about is what happens post-September. So because you're going to have credit rating of all the companies, which if the credit rating norms are not changed or frozen, most companies, however big and small that you are, you will have a credit rating downgrade. Two things that will happen is either you will go from a AA to an A or an A to a B or double B, or you're going to go from a triple B into non-investment grade. If you go into non-investment grade, you'll have a huge recall of loans happening. How do companies survive that? If you actually downgrade it from a AA to A, your spread is going to increase. How do you take the additional burden of the increase in spread? So these are again questions which remain unanswered, you know, and I know a lot of people on the chat have been asking about funding and NBFCs and finance. I think the challenge is that today, you know, whatever stimulus is being given by the government or the RBI till now, on the ground, it's not being passed on. It's not coming into the hands of people like Keshav and Mehul and me. And with all due respect, I think the three companies that we three represent would be in the top 20% in terms of financial management. So if we are not getting anything, and I know Keshav is not and Mehul is not, and I've had independent chats from both of them, and the question is, who is going to get? You know, who is it going to? Then your answer is that you have a record amount of liquidity flowing back to the RBI. There's no point of liquidity slushing around between banks and RBI. It needs to, okay, don't give us a dole, don't give us freebie, don't give us subsidy, don't pay for our salaries, don't do any of that. But at least give us cash flow, at least give us access to cheap credit, at least let us actually recover from that and look forward, which I think is one of the demands that we've been putting across, you know, every single week from ICC and CII and FICCI. And I hope, as Mehul said, I hope and pray it happens because otherwise I don't know. It's
very correctly pointed out, Mang, by most of our questions in the chat and most of our professionals. In fact, we have also been suggesting, right, like you do from ICC, our chambers of professionals, and most of the suggestions that I have myself personally forwarded or our chambers of professionals have forwarded relate to this banking sector. The RBI comes and announced about a month ago, and as you very correctly said, none of the bankers on the ground level has passed on such benefits. And you very correctly said, if you are already a AA or AAA rated company, I think perhaps you can raise corporate bonds at a cheaper rate. You don't need to go to the bank for financing.
So all the AA and AAA companies are now getting loans at effectively 7.2% landed.
So then that is the corporate bond would be 8 plus maybe. But as you said, 98% of the companies are not AA or AAA rated. And how do you solve that challenge? And already last 2-3 years, there has been a liquidity issue, and the RBI announcing on the television and then ultimately not reaching a month has already passed. And actually, there is a lot of pessimism, not only in the MSME, but even in the larger corporate sector. Liquidity, I think, is the main issue. And you said we don't want freebies, we don't want charity. Let there not be wages or salary taken away by the government from us, but at least give us credit to do business. You see our background for this all these years individually, and you said these banks have their norms of evaluation, and I think correctly by March 20 balance sheet, when the bank will say review next year, they do a review of the last 3 years. What will happen to the March 20 balance sheet, which will not show a profit? What will happen to the March 21 balance sheet, which will also probably not show a profit? So how will they review it at that point of time? I think government must come out on this banking reform, banking sector.
To be honest, Jinesh, by March 20, everybody's numbers are going to be okay-ish because we only had the lockdown effects of the last 15 days. The
But
real concern is going to be
Yeah.
Q1 of 2021.
Yeah.
So April, May, June of 2021, when the results start coming out, when people start actually getting downgraded, when people actually start getting, really pessimistic, then you're going to really see the impact of it. And if measures are not taken now to change the credit rating norms and to, change the RBI policy, let the banks decide. I'm again not saying, I'm not even going that give a sovereign guarantee for all loans. These have a hazard of morals, right? So you have a sovereign guarantee giving out to MSMEs, and whether then they will have any encouragement to pay it back. So I'm saying let the banks decide, but at least enable the banks by letting them for a short period of time, with restrictions that it cannot go into real estate and buying stocks or equities, the ability to refund or refinance the companies which need it, which have a 30, 35, 40-year-old track record. Today, let's also understand, Jinesh bhai, is that there are a lot of MSMEs, close to about 63% MSMEs as per our last survey, who do not have a banking credit line. 63% of micro, small, medium enterprises work month to month. They do not have cash reserves. They're typically distributors, traders, and Keshav will relate to it. Most of our distributors, they don't have a credit line. They buy from us, they sell, and the next month they buy again, they sell, they make the 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 rupees a month. They take their home for their expenditures. Question is, today, no banks or no institution is even willing to give them credit lines. How do they survive? So you're talking about banked companies and unbanked companies. There are a lot of companies which are unbanked. So these are again issues which need to be addressed on a wall footing and has to be done now. So that's what's actually creating a lot more stress in the system. That we don't know what's happening. We don't know what is going to happen.
I do.
Just to cut in one point here, like Mang said, I think that banks have somewhat been handicapped by the government. It is their guidelines that is preventing banks. When you look at the repo rate for the past year and a half, I don't think the repo rate cuts have been passed on to business. Whatever logic, I've never gotten an answer for this. Even today, every single bank chairman, every single bank ED that I've spoken to is scared. They say that if anything goes wrong, it's not only my job, it's my future that's on the line. In the past, bank EDs have had the ED and whatnot chase after them for loans that the government had asked them to sanction. And now everybody is very, very pessimistic. So I think there needs to be a policy where the bank EDs or the senior members of the bank also safeguarded to a certain extent. Otherwise, their ability to take a risky loan or to calculate and take a calculated risk will be zero. They will not have the inclination to do that regardless. I think the government has handicapped the banks in a big way. And right now, all this liquidity that we are talking about, it's a farce because that liquidity never gets to the people who actually need it. Like Mehul was saying, this is a big challenge and something needs to be done about it. Otherwise, this is going to continue going forward.
Keshav, in all such decision making, there is always a subjectivity. If I was a bank chairman or if you were a bank ED, I think it is the past which is haunting us. So 2009 ke baad, there was all this lending and which we see has all gone bust NPA. I'm not going to go into bad of it. That is now stopping the present chairman or present ED or MD who's going to retire in a year. Why he will take a risk? Better to sit on cash. Bank का balance sheet हमको क्या करना है? तो नाउ आरबीआई अपना अनाउंस करता है, गवर्नमेंट बोलती है, एफएम लेके बैठ गई बैंक चेयरमैन सीबीआई डायरेक्टर की, आप काम करो, हम नहीं पूछेंगे. अब पुराना तो आप हमको पकड़े थे, तो पुराना जो गलत किया था उसको पकड़ा था, तो आगे हम करेंगे, गलती होगी तो अब कितना रिस्क लेंगे? Why shall I take a risk? I am a monthly salary holder. Why shall I take a risk? So I mean, these are very, very, very fine, questions. But somehow,
hence I'm saying some protection for these people. You see, everyone can make a mistake in business. I am sure that all three of us will tell you that we have made so many mistakes that have taught us how to do the right thing. So how can you expect a bank, whatever level person, to be perfect? It is impossible.
There has to be a risk taking. वो legitimate mistake है कि वो hand in glove. I mean, it's very thin line, sometimes.
Jinesh bhai, मैंने beginning में कहा था ना कि in every crisis is a turning point where
Right.
things have to change. It can't be business as usual. If you're expecting that it will be business as usual and अरे वो ये scam हुआ था, इतना लाख करोड़ रुपया इधर गया था, तो अब वैसे ही अपने को एक economy को चलाना है. We have to do the same way and we have to be so careful. We have to be prudent. We have to do analysis. We are actually going to keep sinking. This is your opportunity. This is the opportunity for India to change the rules of the game. If this opportunity is not taken to change the rules of the game forever, then we will again miss the train. We will again miss the journey to the top, which India deserves. India deserves to be number one on the list of economic superpowers. We have every single raw material that is required to be the most powerful economy in the world. I'm not saying 5 trillion. I'm saying the most powerful economy in the world in the coming decades. But we have to change the rules of the game now. This is our opportunity. This is the time when we have to take the bull by its horn and say, wipe out your past, wipe out whatever has happened. Let's look at this as an opportunity of how we're going to change the rules of the game. Paul Volcker did that in 1970s with the mortgage market. And look at where the US went, where he just changed a simple thing, that we're not going to play around with the money supply. We're going to play around with the interest rates. The whole economy changed with that one simple change. So today is the day when and I completely agree with Mehul, what are we talking about inflation? We should be worried about deflation. Did we ever think about oil at $20? Ever? Did any projections talk about oil at $20? I work in fruit, vegetable, agri-produce. Let me tell you that there'll be a serious pressure of deflation. Prices are crashing everywhere for every commodity. So when you talk about food and oil, which contributes maximum to our inflation basket, I think inflation should not be a worry. Yeah, I mean, if we need to print money, we need to print money. We need to put money in everybody's hands. We need to do that. So that is the need of the hour. I don't think, this whole thing about fiscal deficit, FRBM, inflation, these rules need to be changed today and now. That is what is going to propel us.
I do fully agree, Mayank Bhai, and I also agree with what Mehul said. I am myself not an economist, but while coming to this, printing of notes, I think there will be a rat race between 200 countries in the world and keep on printing of notes. I don't know, but we don't understand. I do not understand really this, but how do you raise either you go for a long-term cheap borrowing, which in the international market may be difficult now, or you keep on printing notes, or you keep on collecting taxes from the wealthy people. So it's a very catch-22 situation. अब हम पहले नोट छापेंगे.
Dinesh, can we have some question from the audience?
Yeah. Note छापना in itself you may have a negative rating in the international market. So ये कितना नोट छाप सकते हैं?
So if we do not do a fiscal stimulus, our rating will anyways get downgraded.
So without a doubt.
So ये पता नहीं क्या चले.
2008 के crisis में America had printed dollars. We're forgetting that.
Yeah.
And look at where the US is today. It's still where it was. I mean, still an economic powerhouse. So हम लोग किस बात कर रहे हैं?
They are capable of giving a 2 trillion stimulus package. That is, today they are giving a 2 trillion stimulus package. That is where they are. So you need to take strong actions. They need to print notes. They need to do whatever they need to do. Like Mehul and Mayank are saying, without a doubt, they need to take these steps.
I am sure it is a tough call, and the economist at the center would be doing all this.
And the one part we're forgetting is that India is sitting on one of the highest ever gold reserves that we have in a century. Manmohan Singh, let's not forget, had to sell gold to save the economy.
That's right.
And we are also sitting on a $500 billion forex reserve. So I think that there is no issue in terms of collateral. $500 billion is higher than India has ever had.
So, ऐसा साल पहले 350 billion था, 350 billion. Our life was the same. 350 to 500 billion, nothing has really changed for us. And that time oil was touching $80. whereas today it is $20-25. But anyways, I think we should take some questions from the audience before we wrap up.
Jitu,
Yeah.
One thing has changed. The rupee is now touching 80. So, you know, it's
Yeah.
moved in the other direction.
जीतू ये क्वेश्चन चैट बॉक्स से तुम लो ना एक आई थिंक आई वांट यू टू कमेंट ऑन दिस एमएसएमई का आईबीसी व्हाट मेहुल जी हैज सेड हाउ फार इट इज you practicing to IBC वाला ना मेहुल जी सेड कि एमएसएमई के लिए ही इज नॉट वेरी पॉजिटिव IBC में
No. Under the IBC front, what I believe is right now the government is planning to suspend this section 7, 9 and 10. You see, maybe for 6 months they are saying, or maybe the ordinance might be coming in next few weeks. But to me, what is there, you see, it cannot be a solution. Suspending an IBC to save an MSME cannot be a solution. And government needs to rather relook on this. You see, IBC is not just about you putting
I didn't say about suspending IBC. What I said is MSME needs protection as an operational creditor as part of the IBC settlement process. Today, MSMEs have no protection as operational creditor.
Yes. But you see, not only about the IBC when the company MSME going into IBC, but there should be some restructuring of the loan. When that the government is completely lacking, that the banking industry is completely lacking right now. You see how the restructuring will happen for the MSME when the bank are really not coming forward for restructuring. They are not using the tools which they already have through the RBI rules and regulations. So you see, there has to be a solution through this IBC. IBC might be a opportunity where we can try to save this MSME. You see, there has to be a very a huge problem about the small company or MSME, keeping them going concern. Their working capital has almost wiped off. Their 1.5 months working capital has almost wiped off. Now, how do they restart their industry? How do they restart their business? So it's not only about the saving the MSME from the creditors, but it's also about how they restart this business post this COVID. So I think the government should strongly think on this aspect. So Jinesh Pia, can we have some question from the chat box that is also there?
Box में I think Mangi has read, me also read. एक तो कुछ comments and there are a lot of questions relating to this again, finance, bank, LIBOR rate. I think Mangi and the panelists have really dealt with it. कोई specific और तुम देखो कुछ है तो, or you can allow somebody to speak maybe.
Anyone can raise their hand so that we can unmute and you can ask the panelists directly your question.
एक बार आशीष रुस्तोगी और ये सुभाष सराफ, I think he has written something.
Subhash ji must be having some questions.
ले लो सुभाष को ले लो और एक बार आशीष को ले लो.
But before that, मेहुल जी से just मेरा question है कि ये IBC prospect में जैसे what do you think whether this would resolve actually the suspending IBC or so basically how do we go about it? Mangi, you can also comment how do we go about this IBC thing? And if we keep this IBC as it is right now, so will the cases spike up like anything, or how do we deal with this spike up even after 6 months? So yes, your comment please.
Okay, from my perspective, I mean, I am not proficient in IBC laws. I just know that IBC was one of the ways of settling NPAs. I think at this given time, I'm not sure, but I think IBC has been suspended or is going to be suspended for 6 months or 12 months till such time that we recover from the pandemic. And I think as a process, it needs to continue. I think there are businesses which have been defaulters. There have been businesses who have been willful defaulters. And some form of restructuring has to be allowed through the IBC. And I think the thought behind it is good. But, as we've all said, businesses have to be reset. IBC has to be tweaked to take into account what's happening with COVID. And we don't want to see good businesses because of it being, impacted by COVID to go into IBC or slip into IBC. But that will also all depend on what kind of packages are available from the government, banks, view towards lending. I think all of those are going to be critical aspects of how businesses are going to be viewed going into IBC or coming out of IBC. But my only view is that IBC is a great tool. I don't think it should be got rid of. I think it should be there to stay. stay. But I think the only bigger, larger issue is how does one qualify which businesses go into IBC and which don't, especially from the view of the impact from COVID. Because there will be many which will be IBC candidates very quickly or have already become IBC candidates.
Yes, right now, when we were also discussing in the other session that there can be an initiative wherein Section 29A, which bars the promoter for taking back his own company, that might be suspended. Then there might not be a investor, the outside investor, third-party investor coming to take over the company, but the promoter, yes, in this process, some promoter might get benefited, but a large picture would be that the company having a restructuring option through IBC itself. So, Subhas, Bhaiya, you are unmuted. You can speak now. Subhas Sharabji.
My first question have already been answered by Mr. Mayank Jalan and Mr. Bhajanka, because the banking was an issue which he has already voiced. My only question comes is there whether NBFCs are ready to take the hit or to lend the money for the working capital, which had not been their domain, because they had been lending only against LAS or LAP or maybe against some term loan or maybe for the bridge funding, but working capital had never been their forte. But since one of my wing is dealing in the funding area, so like there had been yesterday and day for yesterday 2 debates with the banks MDs and ex chairmen, and which they and also from the LFS, one of the ex directors of LFS. So what they said that this is the area which NBFC has to look in, and they need a specific guideline from the RBI for this purpose, for which they have also written internally. So this is a little input from my side. If any of the panelists can want to give this any input from NBFC point of view. And the second one is if panelists can identify 3 important points, because Caventer is also in consumable items and also in real estate. Mr. Bhajanka is also in consumer item. That is of course it is not necessity, but then okay, it is for the house purpose and for various purposes. And Mr. Mohanka is also there. So how can the consumption be propped up? Because people won't be having disposable income. I'm talking about middle class middle class is again 3: lower middle, and the higher middle. And there is an affluent class and there is an excellent class. What I'm excellent and affluent, okay, they can always spend, but everybody would be keeping the cash in hand for some time, because all luxury spending will be on hold. All travels, jewelries, cars, everything will be on hold. So in general, say for electronic items, say for others, say for malls being opened up maybe after June or July, August, how can you identify 3 items which at association level or from various chambers of commerce level we can highlight to the government or to the PG portal that these are the 3 steps by which there will be more disposable income in the hands of the consumer, so they will go to market and spend. Yeah.
So there is one thought process that I think is being promoted quite heavily now. You see, like Mehul had said, that right now you'll get good deals on capital expenditure. You will actually be able to set up a plant at maybe a 15% or 20% lesser cost than what you were able to maybe 6 months earlier, maybe a year later. So I think the government should definitely take a step with regards to GST, and they should announce a temporary GST relaxation for a particular time frame. That will give a consumer an incentive, because today if you look at a certain AC, if you look at a TV, etc., the prices might fall by 5-10%, but the customer is going to likely expect this to continue for the foreseeable future. Now if you give a GST rebate for a period of 12 months, if you look at the example of cement has a 28% GST. If you say that for the next so and so 12 months, 8 months, I don't know the duration, we will only be charging a 9% or a 10% GST on this particular product. Now the customer knows that the price will go back up because GST is going to come into force at the 28% level after a year. But in the interim, he will have an incentive to buy the product. So from my opinion, that is one thing that the government should really strongly look at. It will act as a sweetener to the deal, or it will give some incentive to the government, to the consumer, to buy the product in the short term at least. So I think that is one initiative that the government can initiate, which would help in bringing back consumption or bringing back consumption faster.
Thank you. Mr. Jalan, if you want to say from the real estate point of view and from your consumer items from Kevin.
So we, from a real estate perspective, I think that there are two contradictory thoughts that are coming up. Is A, we are spending a lot of time at home, and we all would want a nicer home with a lot more space. So at some point of time, demand is going to come back for better and a larger home. The other contradictory conversation is that if your disposable incomes don't go up, how will you be able to buy? I don't know what is going to be right and what is going to be wrong. But I do think for a fact that I would not look at real estate prices going up anywhere in the distant future. If you ask me, I am probably predicting a between 10 to 20% decrease in real estate prices from pre-coronavirus. And as we know that even pre-coronavirus, you had a real estate prices which are very subdued. Now, as consumer products, we are into food, and most of our food products are actually at the 5 rupee, 10 rupee, 20 rupee price points, which are at the bottom of the pyramid. Our consumption demand, I do not see it going down a lot once the period is over. So right now we are suffering because of the lockdown, not because of consumption. Because we're not being able to get to the outlets, we're not being able to sell, the outlets are not open, the on-the-go consumption is not happening. So I think that is something, whether it is July, August, September, October, I think it's going to be rectified, and consumers are still going to buy. Now, the thing which worries me about my consumer products is the rural demand. Now, the biggest growth in FMCG in the last 10 years has been in our agrarian economy. So villages and hamlets are actually consuming a lot more of branded products from Levers, Pepsi, Coke, and people like us. If agriculture is not looked into in this period, you will have a long-term issue happening onto our rural economy. You see, let me tell you what is going on right now, is that the prices are subdued, plus harvesting has only happened up to 67 odd percent. That means 33 odd percent of the produce that has been grown is actually going to waste this year. This means that disposable income at the farm levels are going down. As the disposable income goes down, they will not be going in for resowing. So we already have reports that the crop sowing for the next Kharif season is going to be at a record low. If that happens, by the time actually the rural economy is pulled out of this crisis, it will be 1.5 years, because agriculture only works on 2 cycles a year. So if your harvesting and sowing doesn't happen, then you're kind of left to grapple with an issue. So that is something which is of a concern to me, because if that agrarian economy gets impacted, then a lot of FMCG or consumer segment will get impacted, and the growth rates will come down substantially. Okay. So it's all depending on how the government actually handles the our farmers, essentially.
Mr. Mayank, I'll give 2 small feedbacks. Like I was talking to Mr. Shodhi, managing director of Amul, yesterday, and his view was this: initial, when the lockdown was announced, for 3 days consumption of the milk increased all over India by 22%.
Yes.
And then it declined by 12%. And
yes.
It is going to decline further because all the hotels and everything, eateries are closed.
Yes.
So only the essential part is being sold. And coming to, I generally buy during the morning walk the bananas from those small kiosks. You won't believe the bananas being sold at my doorstep at my building nowadays are much cheaper than the price earlier, because the bananas are being produced as the plants give it, but there is less consumption. So they want to, since the product is perishable, they would like to sell at whatever price. And the third is from the real estate point of view.
Keventer bananas is not reaching you. Let me send you the home delivery app of Keventer.
No, I'm not saying about Keventer banana. I'm saying in general. And third, what I'm trying to say, perishable goods prices have gone down in last 2 to 3 weeks. From the real estate point of view, can there be something you think of where we can tell the state government that for a year's time, you totally waive off the stamp duty, or maybe you charge just 1% stamp duty.
So let me tell you.
And
Let me tell you on the states. Now, I have the privilege, being the Indian Chamber President, to have a visibility on many states. I'm just not talking about Bengal. I'm talking about Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha. I had a VC with the Chief Secretary of Odisha yesterday. I've been speaking to various Chief Secretaries from various states. There is absolutely no state in the country which has the ability to do anything. They do not have the money or the ability or the finances to let go of a single thing. Expecting state governments who have absolutely no resources to actually come and say that remove stamp duty, reduce taxes on petrol, reduce taxes on liquor, is just not possible. Almost every single state in the country is currently going bankrupt. What is the main sources of revenue? GST, which is falling because consumption has gone down. Stamp duty, which is falling because anyways, there's not going to be as much registrations and property transactions, and the value of the property transactions is going to come down. Excise from petrol and diesel, where the demand has gone down by 80%, hence the taxes has gone down by 80%. Liquor, which has gone down by 90%. Other sin products like cigarettes and everything, which again is down by 75 to 80%. So states expecting anything for the state government to do on electricity duty, registration charges, stamp duty, I think we are just shooting a bullet where there will be no reaction. मतलब एक मुद्दे के ऊपर आप बुलेट मारते रहोगे तो आपको क्या फायदा होगा? So you are mute.
That is the reality. You mean to say जो आना है वो सेंट्रल से आना है, नोट छापो और देते जाओ.
But on the electricity front, at least the minimum electricity charges, that should be thought of. You see, even the factories are closed for last 2.5 months. It will be further closed also. But minimum charges should be thought of, and that can only be done by the state electricity board.
So again, if you see what's happening is that every single electricity generator has a committed bill coal for fuel or in the plants. The electricity generation is not stopping. You look at commercial and you look at retail people, their electricity payments are down by 38%. So people who have consumed that electricity, they're almost 30 to 38% of the people who have not paid the bills. They don't even have borrowing capacity. And they still need to make the payments to Coal India and everybody else for the coal that they're buying. So without MD and without them getting some cash flows, these electricity plants will just have to shut down. So that's, I have actually had long debates on all of these points that it is actually not in state government's hands. So unless there is a package, financial package, which is announced, which the center says that, look, waive off the MD charges or reduce electricity charges, and we are willing to give you this as an added thing from your other receivables from the central government, the government doesn't have cash. The government doesn't have money to give. No producer of electricity, whether state-owned or private, has any borrowing capacity. So these are actually issues which we might want to raise, and it is very fashionable to raise. But the reality is that the state governments, and all the states I'm not just talking about Bengal, whether it's Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, and Bengal and Odisha, they are all running out of cash. And the cash only has one source, which is the central government. So unless the government of India announces that you waive off electricity duty and you waive off minimum demand charges and whatever your losses are, we will, refill your coffers, the state governments are not going to be able to do anything.
Subhashi, with regards to real estate, there is one action that can be taken, and the action is that they can reduce the rate of interest for home loans. For home loan borrowing, they can reduce the rate of interest by a sizable amount so that there's an incentive for consumers to buy right now. Whether they do that or not is up for debate, but that is an action that could be taken. That is an action that has been mooted in the past as well, but has fallen on deaf ears. So now let's see what happens going forward.
I'm really sorry. I'll need to jump into another call at 1 p.m. So if we can just wrap up.
नहीं Mayank bhai,
Yeah, we are close to the end.
नहीं Jitendra, you please propose a formal vote of thanks before the three speakers. Thank you, all three of you. Jitu, please propose.
Yeah. I mean, it was yes, it was definitely a wonderful session. And let me tell you, yes, there is some, you see, genuine thing which is need to be done from the government end. But listening to these young entrepreneurs, it was wonderful, and it lifted our spirit also. So I would request Vivek, our secretary, to give a formal vote of thanks to the panelists for this wonderful session. Vivek.
Yeah, thank you, Jitu Bhaiya. Respected panelists Mayank Jalan ji, Keshav Bhajanka ji, Mehul Mohankar ji, our most valued invited guests, and all the delegates who have joined this Zoom meeting. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, Vivek Agarwal, the General Secretary of ACA, on behalf of ACA, on my behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to you for gracing the panel discussion and sharing with us your thoughts on the evolvement of business post-COVID-19. Key takeaways for us would be positive thoughts, light at the end of the tunnel, less pollution, birds chirping around, retaining the talent is a requirement, and focusing on reduction of fixed costs rather than seeing a short-term initiative of cutting salary, cash flow management, digital transformation, and important aspect of hedging the risk by multi-location presence. The positive thoughts by all the speakers has given us fresh energy to rethink and re-engineering of our business. I would like to just repeat a line. Life costs very little. Lifestyle is what we spend money on, and we should think on that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayank ji. Thank you, Mihal ji. Thank you, Keshav ji, for joining. Thank you.
We shall overcome, and we shall be together, and we shall actually build on this further. Thank you.
Thank you so
Sure.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mehul. Thank you, Keshav.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Bye.